Hey everyone, it's Mishi here in Southern California currently. I wanted to talk to you today about Usnea. Where I live, I actually live in Kansas, and where I live, Usnea does not grow, but when we lived in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State, Usnea was everywhere. We lived in what used to be a forest, and so all along the edges of the houses and even right outside most of the neighborhoods, it was still very forested. And so most mornings when we would go out to feed our horse, we would walk through this little kind of forested path behind where our horse was. And in the wintertime, it was beautiful. My kids would call it the Usnea forest because you would just have trees that were covered in Usnea. And I know that in many places where Usnea grows, they say that it should be collected, harvested very carefully because there's not much of it. I have to say though, where we were, we called it the Usnea forest for a good reason. The trees were covered in Usnea, draping down the branches, making canopies above the forest floor. And there was so much Usnea that when even without walking into the forest, just the trees outside our home would just drop Usnea on the floor. And daily my kids would bring me these beautiful piles of Usnea and say, "Here, mommy, we brought you more Usnea." It was like just, through the winter, we would just have piles gathering on our kitchen counter. So we were very blessed to be living there through that season where the Usnea was just in abundance. It's a very, very interesting kind of plant. Sorry, just waiting for that car to go by. Usnea it's a lichen, and it's a mix between algae and a fungus, and it kind of looks like a mix between the two of those. Rivka's going to put up some pictures because I don't have any live ones currently. As I said, I'm in Southern California right now, so there's no Usnea around me. So you can see from the pictures that Usnea is a very interesting looking lichen. And the way that you can identify Usnea is, see these big kind of clumps that you're seeing, these big kind of patches of Usnea. They grow on the bark of the trees, and they kind of sometimes they hang down very long, which is why one of the other names of Usnea is actually called old man's beard, because they'll just kind of drape and hang down from the tree branches and the tree trunks, or they'll just kind of grow in these clusters, like these big clumps and clusters. And the ones that I'm holding in my hands, these are just clusters that we gathered from the forest floor or picked off a tree branch or even a branch that had fallen on the floor. Now, the way you can identify Usnea, there are many different kinds of lichens, and there are different species of Usnea. The way that you can identify the Usnea that we use is there are a few very distinctive features. One of them is the smell. I personally feel like Usnea has a very distinctive kind of smell, but I have no words to describe what it would smell like. You have to just smell fresh Usnea for yourself to know what I'm talking about. But when you take one of these strings, one of the strands of Usnea, and you kind of pull it, it should stretch like a rubber band. It should kind of like pull back and forth like a rubber band. If it's not stretchy, if it kind of just snaps in half when you try and pull it, if it just kind of, breaks, then you know that you don't have Usnea. Usnea is very stretchy like a rubber band. The other identifying feature is that when you take one of these cords of Usnea and you stretch it and you break, and you can actually break it. When you break it in half, the inner core, the inside of the strand should be white. It should be a white inner core. And that's how you know that you have Usnea. So again, some of it grows very long, like a long man's beard, old man's beard, sorry. And some of it grows in these clumps and clusters. Sorry, I'm trying to get out of the sun. Now, Usnea is very interesting. It was used by the Native Americans, and it's still used now for wound care. That's one of its primary features. What they would do is you could take a cluster of the Usnea, dampen it a little bit, and just pack it onto a wound. It's antibacterial, it's antibiotic, it's analgesic. It's got many great properties to help clear an infection, stop an infection. And so you can just take one of these clusters and pack it onto a wound. And we've done that before, you know, on small cuts and things like that when we're out in the forest walking. The other way that you can use it is drying it and grinding it into a powder. And I have these little containers, kind of like about that size, that I have in all of my first aid kits of just ground up Usnea into a powder. And if someone has a cut, you know, just sprinkle some of it on there. I put it in my antiseptic powder mix, which has a few other herbs inside of it. I like to mix it with some golden seal powder, a tad of golden seal. And again, it just has this wonderful, very interesting smell, especially when you grind it up. You can also make tincture out of Usnea. Typically, the way that the tincture is made is with the double process. So you're going to use the highest, or not the highest, but a high alcohol content, and I use 95%. And you will do a regular, make a regular tincture, and then you will also take some of the Usnea and you will boil it. So people will do this in a crock pot. I like to do it on a double boiler on the stove. Okay, and another thing I wanted to mention is that before you use Usnea, it's important to, like I was saying, when you take a cluster of it and pack it into a wound, it's important to crush it up a little bit. If you're making it into a powder, if you're making it into a tincture, it's important to kind of bang it and you can even chop it, because it has a very tough inner and outer core, and so you need to break through that core in order to have the medicinal properties extracted. You can also boil Usnea, like I was saying, making it into a tea, but you can use that as a compress for eye infections. You can use it as a gargle for mouth infections or for throat infections. It is also an antifungal. I have not used Usnea as an antifungal, but people have used it for candida infections. They've used it for athlete's foot. Just sprinkling some, powder onto the fungal infection. Now Usnea, it's interesting because, like I was saying, I said a couple times that it's really great for the bronchioles and for clearing out chest infections. And Usnea actually helps clear out the forests. It actually helps the forest, so to speak, breathe more easily because it collects toxins and pulls the toxins and the pollutants from the environment, which it will also do inside our bodies. That's why it's also a general tonic for the system. Now, because of that, it's important to harvest Usnea away from the roads, a good deal away from cars and pollution, because of its a power of absorbing toxins. So you just want to make sure that you collect it from a very clean place. So that's it on Usnea. I happen to love Usnea. I know I say this about many plants. It's my favorite, but I really, really do. I love Usnea. It's fascinating just to look at and to feel. It's soft, but it's also a bit slimy. It's stretchy. It has this interesting smell to it. You can dry it. You can use it fresh. I want to say it's very versatile and very unknown. I feel like not many people will go to Usnea and use Usnea for the common cold or for an infection, yet it is wonderful for all of those things. And like I said, I always have powdered Usnea in my first aid kits and Usnea tincture wherever I go, just in case there's, some sort of infection or wound or anything like that. If you have any questions about Usnea, let me know. Rivka's going to post some pictures of the Usnea that I had experience with when I was living last year in the Pacific Northwest. Again, I don't have any live footage of Usnea growing around me right now, but I'm going to try and get you some more pictures of that. All right, take care and enjoy.